So that's it in a nutshell. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. And I will say, I do see kind of a furrowed brow up there, but with these 2 years, I'm not sure how accurate. I think these numbers are probably low. One of the challenges with code enforcement too is that we've just been manually tracking those things with a spreadsheet. And so it's kind of easy for things to fall through the cracks. But I think that 2020 and 2023, those are our numbers year to date on 2023. I think those are pretty accurate reflection of the number of code enforcement items that come to us. I should also, and the council knows this, but for the sake of the public who may be listening, our code enforcement is a reactionary, complaint-based function. So we don't have a staff dedicated to go out in the city and drive around and see what violations exist. We just deal with those on a complaint basis when they come to us. So that was all I had to present tonight, but if there's any questions, as always, I'm happy to answer those.
Thank you very much, Melinda. You guys are a busy group of people. Busy department. Any questions, Council? Oh, Councilmember Jackson.
Yeah, I just have a question, and thanks for that presentation. That was really helpful. So recently, one of my neighbors had a camping trailer parked on the street for, I think, about 10 minutes longer than it should have been. 72 hours and 10 minutes, I believe. And the police showed up, and so we were all wondering what was going on. And ever since then, there's been a witch hunt or an investigation. Fingerprints, doorbell, Ring cameras. All of my neighbors have been trying to figure out who, or the neighbors that it happened to are trying to figure out who called on them. It wasn't me, by the way. But I'm curious, with code enforcement, like how often is it the police going out to folks versus like city staff? Because I imagine there's probably certain situations where we want to make sure that the staff is safe when they approach a home or the police or whatnot. So I'm just curious about that process.
Those are excellent questions. And one of the things that we try and do is to document things from the public right of way. So I don't really want us to go into somebody's private property to take photos. That's some of the challenge actually that we have in trying to document and address some of the issues, is that if it's something that we can't visibly see from the street, we want to be mindful that it's somebody's private property. So to answer your question though, there are some items that when they come in, we refer to the police department. We don't have any authority to enforce parking. So those items we just send over to the police department. Same, essentially with unregistered vehicles, I don't have the access to go determine whether or not a vehicle is licensed. Police department does. So if it comes to a point where we have to get the police involved, we try and minimize that because they do have a lot of other pressing things to deal with. But at the same time, our authority is limited. We don't have any police authority. And so, like I said, we try to be safe. We try to document from the street. And to not go onto property that we don't have permission to enter. Yeah, so.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate your presentation, Melinda. Okay, Council, do we have any declarations of, do we have any conflicts of interest to declare? I always read that weird. Okay, all right. Would someone like to make a motion on the consent items?
I'll make a motion that we approve consent item A, approval of minutes of July 20th, 2023.
Okay, we have a motion.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? No? Councilmember Blackham.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Motion carries. Let's move on to 6A, work items, Farmington boundary line adjustment discussion. Who are we turning this time over to? Jason? Okay.
All right. As you know, Mayor and Council, we've been exploring for the last few months the idea of cleaning up the boundary along the new connector road there, just east of the West Davis corridor. And you can see on your screens, there's a piece of property just south of the new connector road that's about 6.5 acres. And So the concern, as you might recall, was, it's kind of difficult to maintain that short section of Connector Road. And the thought was maybe just adjusting the boundary to line up with the Connector Road and turning over the entire Connector Road and that property south of the Connector Road to Farmington might be kind of a wash. But we've been doing some further exploration and analysis. And by the way, there was a resolution adopted back on June 15th to formally initiate the process of exploring this. And so the financial analysis, we've kind of gone through that and looked at a few different options as to what that property might be one day. And it becomes pretty clear that the city, that Kaysville would come out ahead quite a bit by keeping the property, especially if it becomes commercial. Right now it's zoned residential, agricultural, but obviously it's in a prime spot for some commercial there potentially. So the analysis looked at, of the 6.5 acres there, our best projection was that's probably going to become, if it becomes commercial, 2 of those acres would become a convenience store / gas station, and the remaining 4.5 might become multi-housing. And that would net the city, or bring in about $57,000 of revenue, property tax and sales tax together every year. Another option could be if it became a convenience store, gas station, and then partially grocery store, which would bring in about $115,000. So, but again, the more likely we think is that could be a gas station and multifamily housing. And so the cost of maintaining that section of Connector Road, as well as the park and ride lot, and when I say maintaining the Connector Road, we're talking about plowing as well as just the cost of every 20 years or so probably having to repave that section. And that's about $15,000, just a little under $15,000. So in other words, if you look at the likely outcome of that property as to what it would bring in with revenue, if it's zoned commercial, we're looking at about a net $42,000 a year. So a benefit to the city of Kaysville. So it's our recommendation that we don't proceed any further with the boundary adjustment, keep it as it is. And of course, this is a discussion, so we're open for questions. But if that is the inclination of the council, then we'd be looking for council to direct staff to go ahead and prepare a resolution for the next meeting to formally terminate the proceedings here to look at the boundary adjustment, and then to initiate the process of considering rezoning that 6.5 acres to general commercial from residential agriculture. But with that, I'll turn it over to the council for any questions and discussion.
That's great information. Really appreciate that. It gives us some data to go off of. And so as a council, I mean, obviously, we don't want to give up land, I would think. Any discussion? No? Okay.
I have a question, Mayor.
Oh, yes.
Sorry, just
Councilmember
one
Hunt.
quick question.
Okay.
I'm just wondering, I mean, I'm totally for keeping it, but as we talked about, like, the cost of it, but as far as like man hours go, is that going to be a significant amount of man hours to maintain that area?
I think Josh can answer. We did talk about that. You want to talk about that, Josh?
Yeah, so what we had done between us and the Parks Department, it was identified the major annual work items that would be performed in this area. And as Jason kind of pointed out, that's maintaining the interchange, which is, garbage removal along the on-off ramps, cutting the grass along the on-off ramps, picking up garbage at the park and ride, plowing the park and ride, plowing the stretch of 950, and then also kind of breaking up the 20 to 25 year lifespan of a piece of pavement into yearly increments. What is that total? So the numbers that we came up with on an annual basis, we might be looking at, I think, $1,600 a year in plowing expenses between the east end of that boundary and where UDOT's portion picks up right there. That takes into account labor, it takes into account the things like salt, and takes into account a little bit of fuel. And then parks, I think they were anticipating maybe 600 between the interchange and the park and ride a year. And again, these are places that aren't built, so it's kind of a best guess from them. And I think that includes labor as well. The item that isn't necessarily specific to labor, but might include some of that, is trying to identify over the life cycle of a piece of pavement. You're going to have crack sealing, you're going to have seal coating, chip sealing or slurry. You'll have overlaying, and then you'll have full depth repave. And that's what we've kind of taken that lump sum, split it over an annual basis there. So it does account for some labor, some materials, and a little bit of equipment as well.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Josh, but I think also, Public Works will be down in that area, like during plowing. You'll be close in the residential areas there to the north, and just kind of coming out onto the corridor. I would
Correct.
imagine not be a huge additional amount of time.
Correct, yeah, we connect in two places here on Devi Drive into the Parkwood subdivision, and then Sunset Drive continues to the north there, which we're currently building and would be responsible regardless of any adjustment to be plowing that, so.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate
But
you.
are you telling me, Josh, are there not places in where Kaysville connects to Farmington where our plow guys wouldn't just keep their plow blade down and follow through with, I mean, I guess I have a hard time imagining, and again, I still don't, it doesn't change my mind on this, but I have a hard time imagining that like a plow driver would get to that red line and see it blink on his GPS and then like raise his plow blade and be like, screw them, I'm not doing this next 100 yards.
Right, I don't think it's at all punitive, having the opportunity each winter to go out and plow. Sometimes you will reach that line and you're gonna pick up. Sometimes you're gonna go to the next logical place to turn around, which could be, I think Fox Hunter is that next road in Farmington, and that would be a logical place to kind of turn around. So you could plow to there. But there are some places where, Fruit Heights has a little stretch of road where the only way to get to it is coming through Kaysville. And we've talked with them, like, we'll pick it up. It's, I think 150 yards. So it just kind of depends. You could have one driver that says, hey, once I reach the line, I'm going to start slowly picking up my blade. I don't want to leave a bunch of snow in the road. Or you could have a driver that just says, hey, I'm going to go to this turnaround. And
Just be a good neighbor or whatever. Okay. I'll make a motion if you want.
Thank you very much. Yes, go
Oh,
ahead.
unless
Oh.
Perry has a question.
Councilmember Jackson or.
Oh, I just
Councilmember-
have a statement. I strongly support keeping this land in Kaysville and exploring possibly some multi-level housing mixed in with a small convenience store. I think there's some real opportunity along the West Davis corridor. So I love the idea of exploring that further.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Oaks.
No, have there been any overtures from anybody, any, Maverick, Come and Go, Chevron, or,
Not yet to my knowledge, yeah.
okay,
We will actively
yeah.
market them.
I personally, I like the idea of a grocery store there. I mean, you think of the folks over in that area, you're going over to Harmon's, or you're going over, anyways.
A lot of growth on that side of course,
Yeah.
so yeah.
Just-
So what we need then is a motion to move this to an action item, to create the resolution. And then part of that, I think, would also be, well, that would be a separate motion. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we move forward, changing this to an action item to, let's see, the action item would be that we proceed with not
Terminating the,
terminating, that's a good word, I like the terminating the exploration. Does that make
The
sense?
the resolution.
I'll be back.
Okay, is that your motion?
Yeah,
Okay, that is his motion. Do we-
Is it gonna
Go ahead,
die?
Jason?
is there an interest in also directing staff to?
do you want me to
initiate looking at
include that in,
rezoning
does that,
process?
can that be the same motion?
Well, I
If you'd
wondered.
like to.
I actually would like to
wait.
maybe wait on that, and the only reason I say that is because I don't know if we can explore purchasing it, and I don't know if rezoning it changes
It doesn't.
how much we could buy it for.
Okay, okay. This is already Kaysville City land.
It's not our land. It's
UDOT.
UDOT's land.
It's within our
It's-
boundaries.
I'm saying I would like to
Right, okay.
explore
Okay.
purchasing the
Oh.
land from UDOT.
Okay, well, and it would require an extra motion to rezone. The action to rezone would be a separate motion, right? So, okay, let's go with your first original motion.
Yeah.
Which is to terminate the resolution. Do we have a second?
I'll
on that?
second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second on that. Discussion? Nope, okay, Councilmember Adams.
Aye.
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 Okay, motion carries, thank you. All right,
Does that make sense, though, Jason?
Yeah, that's really clear.
okay, so council member reports. Anyone have anything to report? Nope, okay, city manager report?
Yes, just one item to bring to your attention, and I'm glad, is Josh still here? Oh, yes, perfect. So we learned that UDOT is planning to repave the section of 200 North between Main and I-15 next year. And unfortunately, that very section of road has also been experiencing quite a few water main leaks over the last year. So this was not really on our plan to replace that water main next year. However, with resurfacing that street, it'd be a real shame, of course, to have to go in and dig up that street, in another year or two and replace that water main. And so we would really like to, we're exploring alternatives to do that. This was not in our budget, but the estimate is, and hold on, it's $1.4 million to replace that section of water main. And that's basically the linear foot cost that we're seeing everywhere else. So, but again, I think am I right, Josh, close to a dozen or so leaks over the last year plus?
So we've had 6 in that stretch in the last 13 months, and prior to that, haven't had leaks for probably 6 years, 7 years.
Josh, a question on that then. So I know that, we all know that UDOT's been working that road and using their trucks, and we know that we have some before pictures. Since we hadn't had leaks like that prior to, you said a long time, is that the responsibility of the heavy trucks at all? Is there any
I would think
liability
that's
there?
Probably unlikely, and even if it was, I think it'd be probably hard to correlate the two.
Really?
Of increased traffic, and our water line's at about 5 feet deep.
Okay,
So that traffic, I'd probably not correlate the two together.
there's no way to
Yeah.
do that, you
A
don't
lot
think?
of times what you'll see is, once you get one leak and you've got to shut it down to make the repair, as you repressurize that, you see subsequent kind of dominoes of, this weak spot was not the weakest spot previously, but now that this spot's fixed, it is the weakest spot, and
Okay,
so a lot of that is turning it off, turning it back on to repressurize. A lot of it is, freeze and thaw cycles as the ground heaves and expands. A lot of it is ferric soils, which means in Kaysville we have high iron content in a lot of the soils around town. And as that mixes with groundwater, it just like eats fittings, it eats valves, it eats pipes. The services as they come off, it'll eat through those pretty quickly. So you'd like to see a pretty long life on some of your components, but as you start looking at some of those impacts, it can, in as little as 25 years to 30 years, you start to see pipes look like they're 50 to 60 years old, so.
okay.
So just a question.
Councilmember Blackham.
Is it possible that we can include the water line in a line item when UDOT goes out to bid so that they have the ability to have that as a line item when they're bidding their contract to see if we can get a better price? Because sometimes that would mean only one mobilization. Those are big companies that bid on those projects, and sometimes that's just kind of a side item that they know is part of it. But I feel like if we do it completely separate, it's going to be more, that's what I'm asking, is there a possibility we can include it into there?
That would be our preference, is not just from a logistical standpoint of not having two contractors trying to coordinate with each other, but also just from an economy of scale. You have a contractor that, hey, I'm doing a lot of work, and to increase our work a small portion. 1.4 million, you know, is what the bid could come back at, but it's very possible that because of economy of scale, you can see that come back lower. That 1.4 does contain a 15% contingency of, you know, hey, we don't know what we're gonna run into. And you might find yourself fortunate and you're not needing to dip into the contingency. Could get fortunate and get good pricing. But I think there's an opportunity there that is more likely to be successful in terms of decreasing the cost by engaging with UDOT to see if you're good including this as.
Just literally include it in their contract as one of their items when they go to bid.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay, great comment. Thank you, Councilmember Adams.
Well, and Dean's not here to answer this, but maybe you would know if, I mean, maybe you're bringing it up because we would have to include it in, like, do an addendum to the budget. But I was wondering, just as a follow-up, if it's possible where that is projected, I think it was projected to come around in like 4 years, if I remember right, or 2 or 3 years. We were talking about doing all of 200.
Yeah, we were
200
talking about
north.
the east section of 200 North from Main Street up to Fruit Heights.
Yeah.
And this is the section from Main Street down to 400 West that hadn't been on our radar when we started looking at the east section of 200 North.
So I guess my question is whether or not, like, you know, if there's a way for us to lend ourselves money from some of our rainy day funds, that then once we do apply it to the budget, which we're planning on in a couple of years, that we pay back. Like, does that make sense? Like, I'd rather do that than.
I think we're fairly hopeful that I don't think we'd have to be doing any like mid-year adjustment, but we can include this potential project in the normal budget process for next fiscal.
Oh, okay, okay.
But in addition to that, there's some funding opportunities that Melinda has helped identify, as well as some others locally and statewide that we'd like to explore as well, rather than just jump right in with potential city funds first, so. Great.
Thank you very much.
And
Okay,
just-
thank you, Jason, for
Absolutely.
putting this
I
on
think-
our radar.
Oh, go ahead.
Go
Oh, I
ahead.
just had a quick question for you, Josh. So that bid for 1.4 million, so when you say that UDOT's planning to repave it, are they going to remove the asphalt and dig into the soil underneath it to repave it? Or is
No,
that
their
bid?
original plan was what's called a mill and overlay, so they come and they shave off anywhere from 2 to 3 inches of old asphalt, and then they lay 2 to 3 inches of new asphalt on top of the remaining asphalt layer below.
Okay,
If there is a water line project included, then in that section where they're placing the new water line, they would be digging down past the bottom of the asphalt into the soil underneath.
no matter what, even if we didn't have that issue or?
No, so
Okay.
if there was no water line issue, UDOT would just come in,
Just-
shave off the
Okay.
surface, repave the surface, and.
Okay. And so that 1.4 million is pretty like locked in as far as all the work below,
No,
just shaving?
I don't think so. It's the consultant that is managing UDOT's project. They got together with some vendors and some suppliers and put together an estimate of what we might expect
Okay.
if we did that project.
Okay, that's helpful. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much.
You bet.
Have a good night.
Now you can.
Run out the door. Okay, all right.
Jason may not be finished, or was he?
John, do you have a comment?
Oh, no, I was saying Jason may not be finished.
Yeah,
Oh.
I'm gonna get to him.
Oh,
I was gonna ask him.
oh, you're
He had-
feeding him too. Oh.
Yes, thanks. Are you done?
Oh, actually, well, yeah, I was just going to say more or less what was said there regarding the funding. I think we're looking at a number of alternatives, including everything that's been said. Maybe bonding could play we are redirecting some of our ARPA funds. We've got $400,000 of ARPA funds that we potentially could redirect. Anyway, we'll come back to the council with some recommendations on that in the near future, hopefully.
Thank you. All right, council. Would someone like to make a motion to recess the city council meeting and convene a meeting of the Kaysville Business Park Architectural Review Committee?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that recess city council meeting, convene a meeting of the Kaysville Business Park Architectural Review Committee.
Thank you, Councilmember Oaks. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Hunt.
Aye.
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 Okay. All right, welcome to the Kaysville Business Park Architectural Review Committee meeting. We are now committee members. I will turn the time over to Melinda.
All right, thank you. So the first item on the agenda is a variance request. And the Kaysville Business Park, I know the council knows this, but the Kaysville Business Park originally was purchased by the city. And over the course of years, that land has been sold off. But when the business park was established, the council created an architectural review committee and then dedicated themselves as that committee. So any new project or new addition or anything that goes on over in that business park has to come to the architectural review board for approval. So the reason why we're here this evening is because we did receive a building permit application for a building that did not meet the requirements in Section 3 buildings of the Kaysville Business Park architectural guidelines. That section says that buildings have to be a minimum of 5,000 square feet, with the exception of public services buildings. And then there's also a condition of having the structures can't combine to cover more than 70% of the total lot. So the request that's come in is for 1,000 square foot, well, 960 square feet storage unit. I'll go into a little bit more detail with that in a minute, but because that did not fall within the regulations, we need to bring this to the council. And there is a provision in the business park guidelines for a variance that was included in your packet in your staff report. It loosely gives some circumstances which a variance would be something to consider, but doesn't give any criteria for what would make for approval, what would make for denial. So one of the challenges of this item in the staff report is that I didn't really have any clear criteria to refer back to issue a recommendation to approve or deny. So this really is something that the review board, I think, has discretion on, and I do think it's a reasonable request at all as well, given the circumstances that the applicant has described here. So there were 5 main points that he put forward, and let me also say that generally speaking, when we're talking about variances, we're talking about land use and ordinances. And there's a very specific process set forth in state code and then our zoning code as to how those variances would be handled. This is not that. So because this doesn't create a request to change a circumstance within the LI zoning code, we don't have to follow that process prescribed in our zoning code or in state law. So the variance request, although some of the justifications for a variance request in state law do mirror some of the circumstances that are in this application. But the property does have Holmes Creek going through it. There are easements on the property from the rail line and then also from the power lines that are going through there. In 2020, the applicant came and presented his entire concept to the review board. He did indicate at that time that he wanted to put these storage units in, but the approval from the review board of that at time was for the main structure. But based on that, the applicant went forth and spent about $70,000 on a box culvert to get a crossing across Holmes Creek. That's something that the county had to be involved in because of it's a waterway and a floodplain. So he had to get a permit from the county. We also had to authorize that permit and those plans. And also the county does have certain requirements and setbacks from the creek as well. So those aren't the city's setbacks, but those are the counties because they manage those waterways. And then lastly, those storage units will be in a secluded location, and they won't be visible to the public, at least from the street in front of the building, the aluminum shingle building. So just a quick overview of the project site. It shows here, this is the street, the building, and then this is the creek, and the applicant's intent would be to have these storage units tucked back in that southeast corner of the property. So this is the site plan that was included in his original proposal to the review board back in 2020. It again shows the building, and then it did show that they were wanting to put those storage units back there. This is just an aerial shot of the property, gives you a better idea, right? We have the I-15 here. Here's the creek running through the property. You can see the rail line, and then those power lines, I think, actually are coming through right about here. This next slide just shows a quick look of what he is intending those storage units to look like. I did go over to the property on Monday to take some photos so that you could see. I was actually very impressed to see that there was a deer that had made it from the mountains across the I-15 to the west side of our community.
They didn't make it there, they lived there.
Yeah, so, but let me just go over real quick what each of these shots shows. So this is from the street, the bridge and the culvert that was installed, leading back to this gravel area. This shot is at the very edge of the but the aluminum shingle property looking to the south. And then this is then looking to the north. So here's the aluminum shingle building. You can see that big power line right there that's running through. And then, again, just another shot that shows this structure, if it were to be approved, is something that could be seen from the parking lot to the south over here. Again, here's those power lines that are coming through the property. And then this is just another view looking north. So here's the creek, and you can kind of see just the opposite view of that creek crossing. This is just to kind of show the proximity to the rail line, which is right here, and then also the I-15. And then lastly, here's just a couple close-up shots of the creek and then that crossing and that culvert that was installed. Again, I really don't have criteria to give you a recommendation. I think the board has authority to do whatever your prerogative is here. If you want to approve the variance and allow that 960 square foot building, I think that's a reasonable thing to do. If you don't want to grant that variance, I think it's also a reasonable thing to hold to those original standards that were put in the development guide. The applicant should be here this evening. Mm-hmm. Okay, so yeah, so Jake Stapp then is here this evening. You can ask questions. He did indicate that those storage units aren't to be rented out. They're just for him to be able to store additional materials and would be only for their use.
Okay, thank you very much. Applicant, will you come on down? Council, do we have any questions for the applicant?
I have a question for the applicant. One of the questions I have is, I get a little leery when I see, because it is a business park, and you want to say it's for storing materials. When I see something that's storing for materials, I usually see something big and open. You can get a forklift in, or you can get things in. When I see 4 bays with garage doors, I picture people putting their boats in there and stuff like that. And it doesn't appear that it would be that advantageous for a business to have 4 garage doors and walls in between where you can't move around or you can't get around. And so I think that was one of the concerns, was we don't want storage garages, whether it's your personal storage garages or your rented out ones. We most of the buildings down there are an integral part of the business, and that's something that just appears to be a little, it doesn't, what it's being used for doesn't appear to what it looks like.
Yeah, so it's mostly, we have a lot of stuff in our warehouse that is not used like on a daily basis. So it's mostly kind of stuff that we'll need. We do have like some vehicles, some work vehicles, so it might be some, but yeah, no personal. And it's kind of just a weird space because it's a good enough size of a lot that, it's 0.4. And so, it's a good, and it's kind of got good security, so it's mostly, just storing things, and kind of more of a yard, I would say. And access-wise, like, we like having, to be able to just go into each individual ones, versus just maybe having one, and then it's a small area. We can't go too high, so it's not like we can maneuver around a forklift in there, so mostly we just, storage of boxes, coil, but having the front doors just being able to open up and kind of drive in is pretty convenient with kind of the stuff we'd be using it for.
I have a question for you. So I think, and I don't want to speak for you because you're here, but I think that what we're looking for is some kind of a reassurance that that is not the purpose. Because in this area, we've had other applicants come and say, hey, we'd like to build storage unit type buildings. And so much money has been invested in this business park by other business owners. And they want to make it, they want to hold it to the standard that was established. And so we would just like to know and have some sort of assurance that it's not going to be a junky, commercially used, rented out storage facility that would just be a nice amenity for you guys as owners, which I understand, but that's not how the business park was really intended to operate, so.
For sure, yeah.
Can I give a little bit, because this is the other thing I'm struggling with, and I don't know if maybe somebody else is going to talk about this, but Kaysville City, when they started the business park, they actually owned all the property there, and they've sold it off little by little, and most of those businesses are locally owned by people around here who have done well, and their businesses have done good, and they bought the property and they built, and there are a lot of people who live within a couple mile radius that live here, and so they put these covenants in there to protect those people who are in there, because there have been a lot of requests in the business park to have buildings of metal siding. There have been a lot of requests for open storage. There have been a lot of requests for a lot of things. These have all been denied. And it's kind of gotten to the point where I'm almost not comfortable trying to grant a variance to somebody on something that I don't own any, I don't have anything in there. Of course, we're Kaysville City, and we have we have some skin in the game because we want our business park that we developed and sold the properties to remain a quality business park. So I would really like to have the opinions of the business owners in there to see what they think this variance, about this variance, because they were held to those covenants, because there were requests from a lot of those to do different things in there. And I kind of feel like we're not the owners in there anymore. Yes, we should be a part of the decision, but they should have a good part of it too.
Melinda, how many, were notices mailed on this? Was that a requirement? No?
No.
Okay. Councilmember Jackson.
Yeah, could you speak a little more to how this is negatively impacting your business, not having more room? Because you kind of mentioned like what you would be storing in there, but what's kind of the long-term goal with the business? How will this benefit you? Can you just kind of speak to that?
Yeah, for sure. So it's kind of a cramped space just because of that river. We could only do so much because it just dissects the property kind of in a diagonal line. So we built the building as big as we could at the time. We've been growing a lot, and so yeah, really, we can take you there, but space is very valuable for us, especially with, so we buy aluminum coils, put it on our machines, and we make metal shingles for roofs. Our main facility is up in Portland, Oregon, but then my dad was the original owner. He grew up in Fruit Heights, and then we had a place up in Sunset, and then we built this. I live in Kaysville, West Kaysville, so it's really convenient for us being 2 minutes away from our warehouse. But space is really limited. Aluminum coil, we get a lot of custom colors, so we have a lot of remnants, and we don't just like scrapping them, because even though you can get some good money for aluminum, it's just money. You know, we usually hold on to stuff. And so it's mostly, you know, everyday items that we use, we'd keep in our big warehouse. This is mostly stuff where we have a lot of boxes, a lot of different custom things. So it would greatly keep our business, you know, running more efficient, being able to store things that, yeah, we don't use as often.
And just a follow-up to that, so if you store like scraps of aluminum in these boxes or whatnot, is it for the purpose of potentially using them for other jobs down the road?
Yes, for sure.
And then how often do you cycle through that? Because I think Councilmember Blacken brought up a good point, and the mayor, like, we don't want this, wouldn't want it to turn into an eyesore just packed full of old aluminum that's just bursting at the
Yeah,
seams.
it would all be inside. So yeah, it wouldn't, nothing would be visible. We stack our coils, just kind of, it's mostly, yeah, just miscellaneous. All of our standard colors, so we do standard colors, custom colors, and premium colors. So when people order these premium colors, we have a lot of not waste, basically leftover coil that we end up getting rid of, but it's usually, you know, for some custom, you know, something that we end up just, somebody needs a smaller amount, and so we use that, but it's stuff that just takes up a lot of space.
So with the different like garage bays, are you thinking of storing the different types of coil, the color versus the
Yeah, we probably
other?
put boxes and cardboard in one, probably different coils in another. We've got another forklift that we don't, you know, that's just kind of a heavier one that we'd store in probably another. And then, yeah, we've got a couple of trucks that might not be a bad idea. Right now, we just leave them out. You can kind of see in the pictures, some of them are parked there with trailers. But because the buildings aren't that tall, it's not like you can really drive forklifts in and kind of roam around. So it's just you kind of drive in, load it, and take it out. So it would strictly be for storage.
What is the height restriction on? Do we know that?
It's somewhere, but it's because of the power lines.
Okay.
So yeah, it's because
So
it goes
that's,
right
that
under.
can, okay.
It goes
Yeah.
right under. Yeah, you can't really
That's right.
do too much.
Those would be Rocky Mountain lines, and so we might be able to tell you what Kaysville's would be, but I don't know what Rocky Mountains are.
And
We had
then,
to get all the info when we built the original, because that'd be like a crane and stuff. I haven't,
Yeah.
I can't remember though.
But typically, I mean, you have to stay, I don't know, 30 feet below the
I
power
don't know,
line.
it
or-
depends on how big they are.
Yeah.
And another question I have, I mean, I see that the exterior finish is aluminum shingles. Is that even allowed in the business park for an exterior cladding? I'm not sure that's even listed as a material.
Cement, block.
Block, rock, brick, or stucco is what I thought it was in the business park.
Sorry, I missed the first part of that question.
The shingles, he's showing shingles as
Basically,
the
that's what we
side.
make.
And
Yeah,
he's
the
showing that as
metal
the
shingles.
side finish of the building, aluminum shingle siding. And I'm not, that's metal finishes on the exterior were not allowed, like,
Sure, it was supposed to be the stone facing and,
Yeah.
yeah. So if the variance is granted, we can ensure that the building does meet the requirements of the business park.
This is one of those where I think there's people who have invested so much down there that I think it'd be important, because this is talking about changing the covenant. This is talking about allowing something. I wouldn't be comfortable making a variance without knowing what the owners down there, because they really are the ones that own the park now. We don't have any property in it anymore.
Right. So I guess what I'm asking is that a motion that you would like to make?
It would be my suggestion that we table this item until we can get a notice out to the people who actually own these buildings down there and see what their feelings are. And we've talked about this before, but it keeps coming up. Are we really the ones that should still be doing this? Should he be going before the
An HOA for
An
the-
HOA
for the
Owners
business park, which doesn't
Association.
exist right now, right?
So,
Nick, what is the, help us out here. Is that something that we can, I guess we can do that?
Yeah, so the board, the review committee, as an architectural review committee, you could table this. You basically function as kind of HOA president,
Right.
board of directors. So, yeah, it's something you could table. I know that the applicant's anxious to get going and has invested a lot, so we probably don't want to table it indefinitely, but a couple of weeks to explore if people in the business park have concerns is certainly something you could do.
Okay.
because I'm not, there have been other businesses there who have made requests and they've been denied. And, you want to give them the opportunity to at least voice their opinion.
Okay, so that is a motion?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have go ahead. Well, we have a motion, I guess. Motion, discussion, second.
Okay.
Yes, go ahead. Councilmember Oaks?
No, the one question, and Councilmember Blackman, I really appreciate your history, your experience with this over the years, because, one of my concerns was the fact that when this came up with the original plans, the building was back there, and were there comments made at that time on if that's not going to be allowed or not? That was one of my main questions, when you gave
Yeah,
the,
nothing was ever said otherwise, yeah, we wouldn't have invested in a bridge and wouldn't have
Yeah.
even thought about going down that road.
that was sort of part of my concern was they've put a lot of money into it, because of, here's what their future plans were going to be. But I do agree with Councilmember Blackham that it's worth, what are the other, occupiers over there, what are their feelings?
And the only reason I say that is because, you allow him to do this, why would you not allow somebody else to do it the same thing because of a hardship they may have? They may not have enough property in the back, but they may want a storage garage. I know that Reading Horizons at one point wanted to build a smaller accessory building and was denied.
Right, I remember that.
And so, I think it's only fair to give the other owners the opportunity to talk about something that's in their covenants.
Okay, Councilmember Hunt, did you have something?
Yeah, if that's okay. So we can make comments?
So we can make comments. So we have a motion, Nick, and we haven't had a second, so we're having some comments. Are we
Yeah.
out of order? We're okay, right?
You're okay.
Okay.
You're okay to do some comments.
Okay, and then call for a second,
and
okay.
then call for a second.
Okay, and I just want to say, I also appreciate everything that's been said. I drove by the property today, and I drove also on the freeway so I could check out the other side, because I think that's an important part of the aesthetic of our city. And as far as this property is concerned, I think it is unique. I don't know that I could be wrong, but it doesn't seem like there are going to be a lot of properties that are going to have this specific problem where they've got the river going through and they've got such a small piece that they can only really do a little bit with it. But having said that, driving by, you're definitely not going to see this from the street. I almost couldn't find the building. You have to drive into the parking lot to find it. And then driving on the freeway, there's enough tree cover, unless those are going to be removed, in which case I would say, if we decided to move forward with it, that we would put something there, like tree cover to cover it up. But aside from that, kind of on a conceptual level, I guess, I think the exercise of property rights, this is a variance, but it's not subject to a lot of the stringent variance issues that we struggle with at the state, where pretty much nothing can be approved. I don't even know why they have them. I think it's something where we have broad discretion, and I also think that in the packet, it said that just because we approve this doesn't mean that we have to approve other ones, even if they may seem similar. Correct me if I'm wrong, is that correct, Melinda? So, I mean, if we want to wait and talk to the other property owners, I guess that's okay, but I really don't see an issue with this, allowing someone to maximize their property as long as we can take them at their word that they're not going to abuse the right by using it privately or whatever.
Okay. Thank you very much, Councilmember Jackson.
Yeah, and to that point, it's tough to be in a situation like this because we want to take you at your word, and I don't like the thought of getting in the way of a business doing what the business needs to do, making money and providing a product. I am actually a fan of possibly putting this on hold, and I would love an invitation to come over and actually to walk through the business and to get a greater understanding, because I'm a little unsure with the answer compared to some of the things that Councilmember Blackham asked. Also, I am concerned too when I see the aluminum shingle siding, since that is against code, and to me it looks like that's probably like an advertisement, using the building as an advertisement, so to speak, especially if the trees are taken down along the freeway. And so when something like this comes to us, I would like to see it, the renderings more as the final product as it fits within the business park and the established exterior and whatnot. But I would love a chance to come by and see firsthand what you're doing and kind of get a better idea before I feel comfortable saying yes or no.
Yeah, most definitely.
Okay, thank
And we
you.
have like some of our shingles on our exterior on some pop-outs anyway, so yeah, you can see what they look like and stuff.
Councilmember Adams, did you have anything you wanted to mention?
No.
Okay, we'll call for a second then. Do we have a second on the motion that committee member
I'll
Blackham?
second.
Okay, we have a second. All right. Committee member Oaks.
Aye.
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 This is the table, right?
Yes.
Nay, and only because I think we should get this done.
Okay,
But
all
it's
right. That being said, we do want to get it back soon so that we have an opportunity to give you an answer and you have the opportunity to do what you're wanting to do. So, okay, we have the direction that we need. All right, thank you. Thank you. Okay, now we need a motion to adjourn the.
No, we have two other.
We have
Wait.
two more items.
Wait. Oh, yeah, you're right. Sorry.
Oh, right, yeah. I forgot there's stuff there.
Silly me. What was I thinking? Okay, closet butler.
All right. This one may be slightly more straightforward. So last fall, we heard the request from Closet Butler to add an addition over here that is currently under construction. They, through that process, decided that they wanted to extend the roof from this little alcove area to allow for extra covered storage. Since I was over in the area on Monday taking photos for the Lumen Shingle Company, I also went over and took photos of the project over there. So the roof has actually already been constructed. It has not been approved, obviously, by the architectural board or through our plan review building permit process. It's not had any inspections on it. But these are the photos. At least the committee can see what that roof line would look like. And then the intent would be to just carry over the same materials that they're using with the addition to cover that area. So we are recommending approval. This fits in line with the guidelines, and the applicant this evening is here for questions as well. I will also say that my hope was that we could have found something within the business park guidelines that would have allowed us to approve something this simple or nominal without bringing it to the board. But it very specifically says that everything must come to the architectural review board. So we are here this evening for that very reason.
Thank you very much. All right, would you like to come forward? Give you an opportunity to share your story.
Yeah.
Any questions, board members? We need to ask you something.
So you've already built it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So what's your name? Brian Sadler. So my contractor, Kent Fisher, called the building inspector, Bill, I think it's Bill, and talked to him about whether or not this would be an issue. And he said the only issue would be just coming before the city council to make sure that we got the approval stamp. He saw no reasons why there would be an issue.
Okay,
And
all right.
I guess I have a question.
Councilmember Jackson.
Yeah, could you just
Or
briefly
board member.
speak to your business and how this would
Yes,
help
Kent Fisher lives
your,
right
your
here.
business function better?
So I don't know if it helps us function any better, but when you come up the side, how we did this addition, the roof line, as you saw on the other part, was so high. And then it drops down to an addition that was approved before we purchased the building by a hair salon. And so the addition that we're adding on is to store material in.
Okay.
4x8 to 9 foot long material, and we needed, we call them bread racks to store the material on. So that's the purpose behind the addition. But if you drive past this building on the from Flint Meadows Drive and you look down and you see this big alcove of open space, it just looks stupid.
It's odd.
So the only thing that would probably go out here is a table for our employees.
Yeah. No, that's helpful to hear it from you, so.
So it's just the roof, so there will not be, you're not gonna have a door? I mean, that won't be.
There is a door there that accesses the outside or into that.
Oh, but I mean, this is just a roof. This is not gonna be like more, you're not gonna have an outer wall.
No.
That's not the plan. Okay.
Okay, any other questions?
So all this other OSB we see that's exposed, was that building, did he get a building permit for that part of it?
Yes.
Yes, for everything over here, correct. And
Okay.
let me just say, I did speak with Jim about this the other day. I was surprised when I went over there to take the photos and wanted to confirm that what had happened was what had happened. And so what he told the contractor was, look, this isn't something I'm going to red tag, but you have to get approval, and if you proceed forward, I will not do inspections, and you do this at your own risk. I think that was a reasonable plan for him to proceed forward with. But let me also just pull this up. And I'd need to think through this, but, you know, if that is covered, does that count as outside storage because there's not an exterior wall? That is something that we would need to consider. I mean,
He's saying that's for like, just, you're saying that the whole reason for it is like a picnic type?
Pretty much.
You're not storing stuff out there on those racks, is that what you're saying?
There will be nothing outside.
Outside.
The material has to be kept inside.
Inside, yeah.
There's a man door on the back side simply for egress. And you have,
There's one right
even though
here.
we have an overhead door, we have a man door on the front, we want a man door on the back. So there was a door there anyway. There had to be a door there.
So just to follow on with Councilmember Adams, so underneath this roof, you will not have material because you mentioned?
Nothing will be stored back there. You couldn't get
Oh.
it back there.
not allowed.
to begin
Okay,
with.
okay. So it ends up being really not outdoor storage. It's just, okay. That clears it up for me.
Smoke break area.
Yeah.
I guess that would need to be, I would say that would need to be included in the motion, that it can't be used as storage, because I think the business park, once she showed a minute ago, it was very clear that it's going to be screened, which means an outside wall.
Right.
Now, if he wants to make a picnic area out of it, but you don't want to go down here 6 months from now and see a whole bunch of stuff where we approved the picnic area.
Yeah, but, you know, and I understand, you know, in their business, that would ruin all their material, because you get just the water damage, and
It
I
would.
can't see of anything you'd have out there.
We sell to a more higher-end client. So if we have people that are driving by, we just want it to look presentable. Yeah, I mean, we just don't want stuff piled up. That stuff that's there now was the previous owner of Complete Construction that owned this building before us left all that stuff there. We just knew we were going to do the building. So.
I have a question.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, to Councilmember Blackham's point, to me, it seems like we would not have to include that in the motion just because it's already in code and it could be enforced with code enforcement if someone complains or if the city sees it. And so am I correct in that thinking?
I would
Just to-
defer to Ms. Greenwood. I don't know if there's a provision in the covenants or in the, I mean, we could pursue it under potentially some city code, deleterious materials or something, but I don't know if the CCNRs of the business park have a provision that would address that.
Yeah, I mean, generally, what we are enforcing is our zoning code, which is law.
So this wouldn't fall underneath that? or-
Well, I'd need to, what special says, I'd need to look and see what, here we go, an enforcement process would be. But I would hope there would be some type of process set forward in here that staff could follow through on. I would need to read that, though.
Yeah,
'Cause I'm
I don't see it
comfortable.
I don't see it as being an issue, just knowing their business.
Yeah, and I'm comfortable with approving this as is, so I was just asking to that point.
Are you ready for a motion then?
Yeah.
Okay. Councilmember Jackson or
You wanna
Councilmember
make
Oaks,
it
who
or
would
I'll
like
make
to make it?
Yeah, I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I'll make a motion that we approve the roof addition for Closet Butler at 1272 West Sportsplex Drive.
All right, thank you. Comments? Nope. Second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councilmember Jackson. All right, Councilmember Jackson.
Aye.
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 Committee members, sorry, you guys. Anyway,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, we are on number 4. Melinda.
Yeah, so council member or committee member Blackham gave us some good history on the business park. When it was initially set up, it was set up so that for a period of 15 years, really the committee couldn't transfer responsibility. We have reached that 15-year mark in February of this year. Looking at what to do with this has been on my to-do list for quite a while, but it's one of those things that usually gets trumped by other things. But this is allowed per the master declaration. And, you know, I think this committee member Blackham just made some excellent points. Initially, we were the property owner, and over the years, we've sold off those pieces of property. And so, in essence, at this point, the committee is making decisions on the behalf of people who own the property, and we're really not in that category anymore. So we did want to have this discussion as to whether or not the committee wanted to proceed forward with having items come to them, as well as the other option, which would be to turn that over to the property owners. So most commonly we do think about homeowners association, but there's just owners associations as well. And so this would be something really that the authority would transfer from you to a committee. We would have to go through, my guess is some type of a legal process where we would then record the declaration of that changing hands with all the properties in there. I'm not entirely sure what that process would look like. I think it would be a lengthy process and probably an involved process as well. But we just wanted to allow the committee to have that discussion. one of the things to consider is that, especially with some of the simple things that are coming to us, this does delay the development process, depending on timing. You know, it could be 4 or 5 weeks even with a delay, trying to get this on an agenda. If there's a meeting that is, you know, canceled, like we canceled the meeting on July 5th. So it can be a bit of delay to the process. It also adds layers to the development process, and in general, I think simplifying development processes when it's reasonable is a good course of action. So really, we're just here to get direction from the committee as to what your preference is, and you can give staff direction to move forward with relinquishing that authority and assigning it to the property owners, or we can continue on as we are right now.
All right, thank you.
I have a question.
Councilmember Adams, or Committee Member Adams.
Thank you, Committee Member Tran.
Thank you. Thank you.
Committee President, maybe? I'm just wondering if, since we've tabled option 2, and the part of the reason for tabling option 2 is we wanted to hear the opinions of other owners, if it wouldn't be a good idea to send out some type of a notice to the owners with a date in mind, saying like, this is going to be the date when we're going to have this meeting and we're going to discuss 2 and 4 at that meeting. See how many people show up. I mean, it just seems like right now, I guess we could talk about 4, but it seems like it'd be a valuable conversation, and also so that we're not wasting our breath, to have that discussion number 4 while some of the members or owners are present, and then they could actually comment, or, you know, maybe they say, gosh, we really like you guys being the bad guys and not us. Or maybe they say, yeah, we would love that. That sounds awesome. So my recommendation, I don't know, I mean, maybe there's other green lights that are popping up, but my recommendation would be that we send out, that we figure out a day that we're going to have another meeting, and that we send out notification with the express understanding that we're going to talk about number 2 and number 4 at that meeting. But I don't know what everybody else thinks.
Committee Member Oaks.
Number 4, I think, because what if we decided today, yeah, we're going to give it up, and they don't want it, you know, then how does it get managed? I mean, I agree with that. My concern is, I think we can do number 2 on our own. You know, if we're gonna find out what they feel like, do we want to bring them all in and discuss it? I don't know. That's my thoughts on that.
Yeah.
Because right now it's our responsibility, and I like the idea of, you know, they're there getting their opinion on it, and then we'll make a decision. But
Okay.
my 2 cents.
Thank you. Committee Member Welcome.
My comments would be this fact that because we don't own property in there, we're not the ones that actually physically paid all that money for that property and built those buildings and went to the higher expense of building those buildings in a nicer construction. And as you know, the Rasmussens recently has spent a lot of money building additional buildings down there, meeting all of the requirements of the business park. There were other people who had requested to go on properties that are on the east side towards the north that were denied because they weren't allowed to do what they wanted to do. There's been a lot, but we don't own it anymore. But I think we did a really good job of sticking to our guns. Now, if you were in any other association and you were making a change where you were going to take away that 5,000 square foot, it would go to a vote of the whole association, and it would have to be a majority would have to approve that. Well, I feel like we're approving changing that 5,000 square foot, and we're not even one of the people who own property over there. So that's why I'm really nervous about it, and I want their input, because they're the ones that really have put out the money and the time and the effort, and it's their businesses, their business park. They were held to a certain standard. And if they want to change that, I guess that, I'd like to hear that. But my feeling is they're going to say, no, we like the covenants, we want them the way they are, but, so I kind of almost feel like a variance is more like changing it, and if it's.
Two, though,
Right, so,
Yeah, but 4 is where we get rid of it, and I think I would like to actually, I think the city, when you make up a board usually that protects covenants, you make up a board of so many people, you can say that the city still has, it's a board of 7 people, 7-member board that represents the owner association. The city has 2 of those votes. I mean, I'm just throwing that out. I mean, that's how you could do something like that. I do something similar with mosquito abatement because Davis is so big and Salt Lake's so small. So we have 4 members from Davis who are on the board and 2 are on Salt Lake. Well, the votes from Davis are only half a vote for the 4 people. It's a full vote for Salt Lake. I mean, that's just one way it's done. But there seems like there's ways for us to stay involved, and it could be such that the item comes to the council and it slows it down. I hate the slowing down part. I agree with you. But it could come to the council. You could take the majority of what the council said or whatever, and then that would be the vote that you would represent at that board.
so in order to address number 4, I guess staff needs direction from us as to whether or not we would like to have you reach out to the property owners to start the discussion, or is the direction that we would give you to just start the process of changing authority? Because if we're changing authority, we need to have somewhere for it to go, right? So I guess I'm just wondering, is the first step just to involve all of the business owners, to send a letter to them saying, hey, council is, or the committee is going to change the way we do things, and we need them to be involved?
So I think that's going to be a first step regardless of what we do, because in order to change the covenants and the CCNRs, we have to get 60% of the owners in the area.
Okay,
So we're going to reach, I mean, regardless of unless you tell us, no, we want to keep it as is, great, then we'll just keep it as is. But otherwise, we're going to have to reach out to the property owners, and we're going to have to get 60% of them
Okay.
to agree with whatever direction we want to go.
okay,
I think Councilmember Blackham has some great ideas, and that would also eliminate the need to notice. It would reduce the city's liability if it was clearly a separate board that was making these decisions.
okay, so as long as we stay involved with a vote or 2 votes or something on the committee, or,
Yeah, if
great.
that's what the council wants to
Okay.
do, and I think there's some good reasons to do that.
Okay.
I'm kind of taking out over from Melinda here, or Miss Greenwood, but yeah, I think it's good to have a hand on the wheel there. It's an important economic part of our city, and, but there's a lot of ways we can accomplish that if the committee's open to that.
it sounds like the committee's open. Should we take a quick poll? Are we all open to that? Okay, that's
Yeah,
the
I think that's
direction
a
that
good
we want to
idea.
give you then. Thank you. All right, so now we need a motion to,
So was that a motion, a second, and an approval?
that's the
make a mo-
recommendation, right?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
To.
Oh. I thought you were asking me to make a motion, sorry.
Yes, we are, to adjourn this meeting of the Architectural Review Committee. Yes, make a motion to do that. And reconvene as city council.
Can we vote on both those things at the same time?
Yes.
I'll make a motion to adjourn this meeting with architecture, counseling things, and reconvene our city council meeting.
Second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Councilmember Adams, or
Aye.
whatever you are. Okay,
Aye.
Aye.
okay. All right, thanks. Now we need a motion to go into a closed session.
I'll make a motion that we move to a closed session.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, so we are going to dismiss ourselves, go into the board, or the conference room, and go into a closed session. Okay, 5-minute break.